Were you senior warden more than once?
No.
Just one time senior warden?
I don't know what it was originally, but then it became a retired senior warden.
How many times did you serve on the vestry? Do you know that? More than once? Were you on the vestry more than once? In your lifetime?
Well, one long period.
One long period?
Yes, one
Like
long.
one long continuous term?
Well, yes, you served there until, you know.
Until you died?
Well, no. Actually, you served there, but you knew other people wanted. You know, other people wanted to be wardens and so forth. You sort of backed away from wanting
Okay,
to.
so
You
so
didn't-
what was the longest time you spent on the vestry? You saying you were on the vestry for a good 10 years?
I would say yes.
Okay. How about that? Hey, who was your most memorable clergy person here? Who was your most memorable pastor, most memorable priest here?
Well, of course, the one that we just retired,
Jim?
Jim.
He was your longest serving, was he your longest serving?
He was the longest serving, and he did a great deal to take a church that was, I would say, surely going to be on a downfall, and brought it right back.
He did he?
Absolutely.
What do you suppose that was due to? His charm, his abilities?
I can tell you what he told me. He came as a candidate. But he couldn't become a priest because he was one of the ones that, because of his particular position, couldn't immediately become the priest. But he came, and we thought, we always looked at these people that came. And the thing that interested him was, when he came, the service was over, people were coming out, and street people were coming in, and they were being invited in for coffee by the people that were leaving the church because they had a coffee. He was so impressed by the fact that our people were interested in street people and willing to do things of that nature, that he personally told me.
Would you say that St. John's, throughout your career here, was always interested in the outreach, always interested in helping those who had less?
There were a number of people that left over a period of time.
So St. John's was
Well,
always...
No, there's a list of all of them in the book that I have.
What I mean is, would you say that St. John's itself was always there for the needy, always there for people like the homeless? Has it always been that way?
I would say there was a degree of that, yes. Yes. You see, what the downtown church, what was the church that was on Prospect Street?
Trinity?
Trinity.
Trinity Episcopal Church.
Yeah. That was high church.
Yes, it was.
Yes, it was. St. John's was a church willing to invite people. And then we had 3 small churches on the outreach, run by priests, to cover the north end, the west end, and Waterville area.
Were they Episcopal churches?
Yes.
Okay, was St. Mark's one of them?
I should know the 3, and I think,
How about Christ Episcopal out on East Main Street?
yes, I think maybe that was,
Okay.
I think that was one of them.
Remember St. Mark's up on, I think it was Hewlett Street.
Yeah,
St. Mark's was up there.
yeah,
This church, Christ, and Trinity. So there were, well, yeah, there were
Yeah.
4 Episcopal churches at the time in Waterbury.
yeah. Well, who's the one who used to come in swinging his cane and stop, talk to the
Oh, Jack Parker?
Jack Parker?
Reverend Parker?
Yes.
When I first met him, he was up at St. Mark's. I'm sorry, when I first met him, he was up at Trinity.
Well, he was just terrific.
Yes, he was a good man.
He was terrific. He came to me one time. This is an off story.
Jack Parker?
Yes.
Is this a Jack Parker story?
Well, no, it was a serious thing. He said, and that's not the haircut that I have now. He says, I like your haircut, he said. He said, who cut your hair? I said, well, I go to a nice Italian barber. He said, do you think he'd be interested? I said, I sure do. So I made arrangements with him. I told the barber that he would be coming. And he was pleased because this barber was barbering ever since he was 19 years old. And he would cut your hair decently no matter what. As a result of that, Jack used to call me periodically, or I would call him, and we'd talk back and forth about things, personal things.
Yeah, Jack was good people.
He had problems with his children and his wife, serious problems.
Henry, have you always had a mustache?
What's that?
Have you always had a mustache? You?
No.
When did you start growing your mustache?
Oh, I don't remember. But I guess I thought one time it kind of looked good.
What color was your hair?
Blonde.
Was it blonde?
Blonde.
Okay.
Now you throw me off.
I'm sorry. You were blonde here? Blonde? Okay. Light blonde, dark blonde?
It's a good blonde.
A good blonde. A good blonde. Okay. How long were you and Mary married?
How long were
How long were you two married? Before she passed away?
until she passed away? Yes,
For how many years was that? How many years were you married?
68.
Say it's a long time. That's good. Good for you.
Yep. From the day that we were married till the day she died, she came to church. And when she died, we took her home
What was that last part? I'm sorry.
immediately. That's where she wanted to be, because the family was there. And the doctors all said, going to send her to a nursing home. And we said, no work, nowhere. We are taking her home. That's where she wants to be. And that's where she wanted to be. I would say that the men that I talked about before, the 4 men, were the ones that did a great deal for me. Within that group, there was a family that owned the division of schools that I worked in, that came to this church.
Were they good benefactors to this church?
Yes, they were. Mm-hmm. But, you know, they never made a big deal about it. But if there were some needs and so forth, I knew
they took care of it.
Yeah. They might not have been big ones, but they were the ones that were necessary.
Mm-hmm. Like a roof or
Yep.
repairs of some nature.
Well, this carries me into, now I was telling you about my education.
Yes, sir.
I went to grammar school, graduated.
Which grammar school? You got to tell me what.
I went to Walsh
Walsh School, grammar school.
Grammar School until Woodrow Wilson School became the school. Mm-hmm. I went to Woodrow Wilson School until I no longer went to grammar school. I went to high school. I went to Crosby High School. In Crosby High School, I was always interested in mechanics or things of that nature. They had a course in drafting. And I took that as part of my course. And the man that was there, he had a brother who was doing the same thing. Well, this man took an interest in me, the first one. And he said, I have a new group coming in every year. Would you be interested in staying here and having to teach some of the ones that are first a little bit about it? And then he said, you know, of course, I would take over. And I said, yeah, I'd be interested, yes. He was interested in that. He was interested in me. And when I left, there was a course of advanced on the outside that you could take. So I signed up for that. Well, I went there the first time, and I wasn't much pleased. I went there the second time, I was displeased. And so I left because they weren't teaching me anything, really. So, going back to when I was in the paper about being the union warden, the man that I first worked for and it had me starting the inspections and so forth. Called me and said that I was going to advance to all the other units and I would be trained in what they did and how they did it. And I went to 6 more units. That is what I called my college education. In doing that, I was required by some people of high authority to do certain work for them. All of this turned out to be my college education. I learned things about just about everything that went on, why it was done, how it was done, and how to do it for a certain period of time. Then it was transferred to a total of 6 different ones. Now, the thing I didn't tell you I should have in the beginning, Scholes had a group of people that they would train if they came and were interested in working. Amongst that group were members of the church. In the course of what I was doing, I set up all of this inspection and so forth. And the factory all this time was going to go into this great big mill. Material originally came in coils of 180 pounds or 240 pounds. That was what I had to handle and put into the machines. Well, we're going to turn that into material that is 2,000 pounds. How do you handle that? The movement is all done by crane. The inspection is looking at the material itself, looking at the surface. Is it prepared to go into the next operation? Do we see flaws? And if so, they were to be reported. My method of reporting was always to go to whoever was responsible for that particular procedure. Now, prior to that time, we had material from the mill to the manufacturing division. If something was not proper with the material going there, I was notified to go see what it was, try and correct it, or make a decision on it. So I did that for a period of time. That extended to the point of, as well as doing that, I then had to do the same thing for companies in the area that were buying our material and making complaints. Those were scheduled. I met the salesman. We went to the company. I would find out what the complaint was, and very happily can say I was able to help 50 out of 52. 52 was the number. That extended afterwards, before, I'd say, that I did experimental work. There were other people that had experiments going on that would invite me to go with them on their experiments. Just as, additional training, you'd say. I enjoyed that. I enjoyed it particularly because of the people that I went with. They were always so nice to me. And when I went and I was on my own, I was told, you get the best of eating, you get the best of reading, you get the best of anything, and all expenses will be paid to the penny. If you had to stay overnight, you stayed overnight. If you had to make a change to some other place, you transferred there. Very interesting. Very interesting. And the two that I couldn't help was one man who had a small business, and when we got there, I was horrified. All around his property before his business place was loaded with beer containers. He was so drunk, he couldn't tell us what he was doing, and his man wasn't there either. That's number one. The second one was, we went, I forgot the name of the factory. But the man that did all of the receiving of material was the man that we were sent to. And the salesman introduced me, or introduced himself first, and then introduced me. And that I was here to try and help them on their problem. And I was told I wasn't going to have to see the problem. He knew exactly what it was, and he would take care of it. Well, our salesman got a little bit, wondering, and said, how we came this way, and so forth. Didn't make any difference. He knew what the problem was, and he'd take care of it. So I turned to the salesman and I said, it's a sales problem. I said, you know what to do about it. So he's telling him, return your material. And we left. And so when we got back, I turned the report over to the man who's in charge of our materials and what the standards were and so forth, the commercial standards, so some of which I wasn't even aware of, but those of dimension and appearance, and I knew a little bit about, I could tell from the material what the percent of copper was in there. I was responsible for that. And write a report, which I did. And I was told, when the material comes back, will you have it inspected? I said, yes. I said, I have two of my men who, when I'm absent, sometimes going somewhere, they will take over and they know what to do. And I said, the only thing was, will you allow me to give them overtime pay because they're doing this in overtime? I said, by all means.
Gary, a couple few more last questions. Where'd it go here? Well, here's a question that's been bugging me. Why don't you want the front door painted red?
I was 110% against red doors.
Why?
There was varnish on there.
Yeah.
And I had a plan. I was then retired. I had time. And
Did you revarnish the doors?
I scraped the doors down right to the
To the bare wood?
bare wood. I knew where I was buying my materials, what the quality of the materials were there, plus the fact there was a man that worked in Scoville's, and he knew how to mix paint. He could come up with colors that you couldn't put a name to. He was that good. And we went down there, and I talked to his boss, and I said to him, I'm scraping down the doors. The church is on the church. The doors on the church. I said, there's varnish on them. He said, varnish? He said, yes. He said, come on, let's go take a look. I said, okay. So we came up. He took a look at it. And he said, this, he said, is when you finish scraping these, you get them down to the bare wood, you come back and see me again, and I will tell you what you're going to do. Which he did. He took me right back, very pleased with the way it was scraped. And actually, you know, a little more than just the scrape. You had to do some little finishing besides that. And said to me, sun comes up in the morning, he said, comes up from the east. He says, it shines right on this door. He said, and you can't do any varnishing with sun on the door. He said, it will not be lasting.
No.
It'll be there, he said, but it's not going to last.
The varnish.
So, he said, I will give you the varnish that you can use. And he said, it will withstand the scraping and the way that the doors are presently finished. But he said, no, you varnish it this way, proper way to wash, to put it and spread it properly. And told me, which is not a difficult thing, just the way the brush you were using, the way you were using it, and the area. He came up, he was pleased. I was tickled pink.
All right. Hey, 2 weeks ago, we had a little event that you attended. We had a wine tasting. We had a good 200 people there. Did you have a good time? When you came to the wine event?
Oh, yes,
Did you taste any wine?
yes,
Did you taste any red wine or white wine? What'd you taste?
red.
Red. What'd you like?
I liked it.
Did you try the beer that they had there?
No, I didn't.
Did you have some of the food?
I never drank beer.
Never drank beer?
No.
But you like a little wine every now and then.
I will have wine when I go to a dinner.
But just one.
Absolutely.
What do you credit your long life?
I would say I credit my long life to my wife. She stood by me no matter what. We had some incidents that I will never ever tell people.
Were you a tough guy to live with? Were you a tough guy to live with? Or were you an easy guy to live with?
No, I was stubborn.
Okay.
And every one of my children will tell you I was stubborn. And I still am.
Well, you're 95.
And my goal is 96.
Oh, okay. Then the year after that will be 97?
I've been told different things. If I make 96, we're supposed to have a party at the church.
Were you ever a smoker?
Yes, I did smoke.
Did you?
I smoked a pipe.
Okay.
My father smoked a pipe, and so did I.
You ever smoked cigarettes?
A little bit, but not.
No, huh?
No. Because the druggist that we went to told me not to smoke cigarettes, they're no good for me. I said, well, my father smokes a pipe. He said, I will say a pipe, but I will tell you what tobacco to use. And he told me. And that's the kind of tobacco that I used.
Last question. What are your hopes for St. John's? What are your hopes for St. John's future?
St. John's future? I would hope for continued growth. And I think we will have to have somebody of the caliber of Jim Bradley. And I think it'll be difficult to find a candidate.
But
Originally,
but it's possible.
pardon?
It's possible, though.
Oh, it's possible. Though originally, the diocese gave an area within which people or candidates were able to come to be interviewed. If we found candidates that we were interviewed in, we would have them come, and we had our committee that would interview. And if we had an interest, we would send somebody to their church and talk with the people who were at their church and look a bit over what the church looked like and come back to see whether we would say we do have an interest. that would be known to the,
Investigating committee?
to go out to the one who makes the final decision.
Search committee?
The information would brought back would go back to the
Vestry.
who's making decisions out there.
You mean the search committee? The search committee goes out.
They come back with recommendations of candidates that would be acceptable to the man that's accepting them now. Out in the
Jay, what does Henry think of Amy as our first woman priest?
That's a good question. How do you feel if we have a priest in charge who's a woman? How do you suppose she's doing? Reverend Amy Wellen, how do you think she's doing?
I know how she's doing. She's doing all of the work accepting the finance. She leaves the finance up to the committee,
The Finance Council.
Finance Council.
Well, I must say, she's
And she will outwardly tell, she's told me very much the same thing. And this is where she takes herself to other places where they have groups of women having get-togethers and so forth to see apparently how that stands with those particular areas. Whether she really attempts to do that, I don't know. Her son is a priest. No,
her husband.
her husband's a priest. So,
Okay, then what's your parting message for the members of St. John's?
I would ask them to continue to St. John's to as long as they possibly can, and only leave for very serious situations. And of course, one of those came up about the gay people. However, we did gain some people from the church in Watertown who came because of the way things were handled there and how different things were handled here.
St. John's is a very open and inclusive parish, would you not agree?
Yes. And it was exactly that brought them here. And they were the ones that did all the kinds of work that I was involved with here at St. John's. We built the first ramp for the people that had to have a ramp to come in.
Well, Henry, I thank you for your time today. Maybe we'll do some of this on your 96th birthday, too, in March. It's coming up. It's only around the corner.
Could I just say a thing about when I went got trips with out of state and so forth.
Sure.
I met some of that company that I said came to the church that were in the area that would come and get me to be with them for a while. And some of them were going to be there for a while, and we'd stay there and we would talk. Sometimes they belonged to clubs, members only. They would bring me in as one of their friends. And that was another part of my, but the interesting part of one thing was the man that I first worked for and had to do all of this inspection stuff and so forth, saw in the paper that I was a junior warden. He was as Irish as you could be, as strict as you could be, and he expected you to be someone who would do your work and do it.
When he was the guy who was the Episcopalian, as you could be, right?
And he's the one that what I told him that I had to come down if there were emergencies here at St. John's Church, that they would call me from the church and ask me to come down because all of the important people were going to be there and interested in what they could do to correct it. He stands 6 feet and something tall, and he's going like this. He says, Henry, you get a call, you call the office, you tell them you're down at church. He says, you go down there, and he says, you take care of that, and you stay there until they resolve what to do. Just call the office and tell them you're down at the church. What could you ask for?
No.
All of my children at some point came to church. All of them went to college. They all found a means of going to college because we didn't have the finances of that sort. And it was either through friends of ours or people who knew that there were openings looking for young people like that. And they, by their own, were able to do that and take out the loans that were necessary to go. And one of the girls is my daughter that is living with me and is taking care of me. And if she is unable to take care of me, if she's going to be away for a few days or something like that, I have another daughter who is a nurse, who is presently living in Waterbury. She moved from Winston. She's living in Waterbury now. And she will come and stay with me until Linda comes back.
How are you doing on the tape there?
Well, I've got about 10 more minutes.
Anything else you want to say?
When they all came to church
All the kids.
before they went to, and in some instances when came back home, came down because they had friends here when they were coming to church. And there's a group of fellas that know about me because of they were in a committee, a youth committee, and so forth. And they keep in touch with each other and are scattered all over. From Maine, I don't know where. When they found out that I was ill, one of them, he called the others. Anything happens to me, they call the others. Back and forth. I'm grateful for that. How do you find kids who are at that age, 12 and 14? But I was not commended one time when I was teaching these 12 and 14-year-old kids because one of the, I don't know what you call them, they're just starting to be learning to be a priest. Forget the
Curates?
whatever they call them. He reported to the man that was in charge of all of this, Sunday school and so forth, saying that I wasn't doing enough about religion. But every one of these kids had a problem. It wasn't religious, but how were they going to take care of it? They were looking for help. And I was able to give it to them. They're the ones that are calling back when something happens to me. And one of them who, well, actually went away. I don't know where he went to. But a few years ago, came back and he stopped into the church and he saw me. He said to me, "Remember me? I'm the one who gave you all the trouble." As I was, I think I told you that the church, the company, Scoville Manufacturing, had openings for others to come. And every one of them that accepted the job got something that told them about the job and how to go about doing it. And I got that when I first started, and I continued through all these other areas. My reporting at that time was, whoever I went to, I reported on a monthly basis. I have a son who lives in Ohio, calls me every week to find out how I'm doing and how one of his sisters is doing. A sister that had a very, very difficult over 25 years. He comes and visits her, talks with her every day. But he comes out on a set period.
Did you ever think you'd live to be 95?
No, I never really thought much about age, actually, until, well, when Mary was beginning to get sick. And I realized the care that was needed, and not only by me, but by all of my family that was able to help.
You're very appreciative of your family, aren't you?
Yes. They all know I'm stubborn. They tell me I'm stubborn, and they put up with it. And I get to know it. I get to know it almost every week, once a week or so.
Well, if you weren't so stubborn, you wouldn't be 95, right?
No, I wouldn't have been. No, they're all very good, all very good. And the unfortunate thing for my daughter that's with me is that she lived in an area that went from just a regular area into a commercial area, which became such a terrible area. She just almost went completely out of her mind. Because it was a state road that she lived on. The state couldn't and wouldn't do it. The town wouldn't do anything with it. And she had to find some place to go and asked if she could come to my house for a while. And she has been here ever since. And has taken care of me ever since.